Mathematicians, today we're going to be learning about whole numbers. More specifically, we're going to be learning about prime factorization. Before we get started, prime factorization is when we write out all our factors in prime numbers, okay? So we could have multiple factors, and as long as they're all prime numbers, that means we're done. So we're going to get started with the number 150. And first, we're going to break it down into two factors. And it doesn't really matter which two factors we use. At the end, we'll get the same answer, but you could pick any two factors. So I'm going to pick the factors 10 and 15. And that's because 10 times 15 is equal to 150. Now notice that these are not prime numbers yet, so we have to keep going, all right? So now I'm going to take the 10 and find two factors of 10. And two factors of 10 are 2 and 5. And then I'm going to go over to the 15 and write it out into two factors. And two factors of 15 are 3 and 5. All right? So now we have 2, 5, 3, and 5, and those are all prime numbers, okay? So my prime factorization of 150 is 2 times 3 times 5 times 5. Now all I did was take these last four numbers and write them in numerical order from least to greatest. And if we multiply all these numbers, we'll get 150. So for example, 2 times 3 is equal to 6. Then 6 times 5 is equal to 30. And then 30 times 5 is equal to 150. Okay? So this is the prime factorization of 150. Mind you that when we are doing prime factorization, we can't end up with 1 as one of the numbers because 1 is not prime. A prime number is a number that has two factors, and 1 only has one factor, which is just 1. All right? So here we have to write out our prime numbers, and then once multiplied by each other would give us 150, and we're done here. Now, let's say that we didn't want to start off with 10 and 15. All right? We can take 150 and break it down into two different factors and we'll get the same result. So let's try it out. So instead of 10 and 15, let's use 2 and 75, all right? So now 2 is already a prime number, so all I'm going to do is just bring it down. 75 is not a prime number, so we're going to break it down into two factors, and those two factors are 3 and 25, okay? So again, 2 is a prime number, so I'm going to just bring it down again. 3 is a prime number, so I'm going to bring it down again, but 25 isn't. And we could break down 25 into two factors, which are 5 and 5. Now we have 2, 3, 5, and 5, and all four of these numbers are prime numbers, so we're done here. So the prime factorization of 150 is 2 times 3 times 5 times 5. We ended up with the same answer, so it doesn't really matter which two factors you use initially as long as you keep breaking down your numbers if they are not prime. And if they are prime, just bring them down as you see here. All right? So let's do another example. So now I have 225, and we're going to break it down into two factors. Those two factors being 9 and 25. 9 times 25 gives us 225. And neither of these are prime, so let's start off with the 9, and we could break this down into two factors, which are 3 and 3. And now those are prime. And now 25, we could break that down, and the two factors multiplied by each other to give us 25 are 5 and 5. So here we have 3, 3, 5, and 5. And those are all prime numbers, so that means we're done. So the prime factorization of 225 is equal to 3 times 3 times 5 times 5, okay? If we did 3 times 3, we would get 9. 9 times 5 is 45, and then 45 times 5 is equal to 225, all right? So if you're unsure of your final answer, just multiply all the numbers together and see if they give you the number that you started off with, because it should, all right? And again, we're going to use the same number, 225, and just show you a different way you could have gone about it. So instead of picking 9 and 25 as our factors, we could have picked 5 and 45 because 5 times 45 is equal to 225. We know that 5 is prime, so we're just going to bring it down, but 45 isn't, so we're going to break it down into two factors. So 3 times 15 is equal to 45, so we could break it down into those two factors. Now again, starting with the 5, that's prime, so I'm going to bring it down again. The 3 is prime, so I'm going to bring it down again, but the 15 isn't. And we could break down the 15 into 3 and 5, okay? So we end up with the same four numbers, perhaps in a different order, but all four numbers are the same. So the prime factorization of 225 is equal to 3 times 3 times 5 times 5. Remember that our final answers all have to be prime, and then when we multiply these numbers by each other, they should give us the original number we started with, all right? And that's it for prime factorization.